This is the month of May. Month of May is our Mental Health Awareness Month, and I am your moderator this afternoon, Elizabeth Anukwa. And on this segment, I have with me Marie Eldosu. Kindly introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yes. So, hi, as Elizabeth just eloquently just said, my name is Marie Eldosus. I want to thank you guys for one having me, and then second, I want to introduce myself. So, my name is Marie. I am a mental health therapist. I've been in the mental health field for about 9 years as of now, providing individual, group, and family counseling to children, adolescents, as well as adults. But thank you guys for having me today.
Thank you for coming on. We are excited. So, we speak often, and I feel like we're always talking about mental health this, mental health that. Of course, this is where the world is, and I'm happy that people are starting to acknowledge that mental health is actually a thing. So, jumping right into this segment, could you kindly define what mental health means to our viewers?
Yes. So when we talk about mental health, right, we can look at it from multiple different facets, but there's a specific definition that I like to use when I talk about mental health. So mental health focuses on our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So it's three different parts of who we are as as a human. So there are other, of course, factors that contribute to mental health, which we're going to discuss a little further. So, of course, we look at biological factors such as genes or brain chemistry, and then life experiences are also going to impact your mental health, such as trauma or abuse, and then family history of mental health problems that most of the times we don't even know about because our families don't share. And we're wondering why we're struggling with something. And it could be passed down through our generation. So, those are three different factors that could play into our mental health. But when we look at mental health, we're looking at the social, emotional, and psychological well being of a person.
Yes, well put. And I'm happy that you talked about trauma and family history. As cultured folks, because I'm from African descent and you're from the Caribbean,
Yes.
we come from a hush culture, right? Things happen to children when they're young, and it's like, hush, it's okay, don't bring shame to the family.
Yep.
But as we go through life and as we progress and we mature, those things, those experiences, they don't leave us. So
Mm-hmm.
that becomes part of us, and then we become angry adults and hurt people. But we'll get into that. So
Yes.
thank you for that.
Yes.
Can you please give us some or explain some symptoms of mental health crisis? And I want us to start from the little ones and gradually build to the bigger ones because we always look at mental health as a crazy person walking down the street
Right.
naked with dirty clothes and bad hair,
Right.
right? Where mental health can look like you and I, right?
Mm-hmm.
The well put together folks or the everyday working folks, the
Yes.
stay at home mom with the kids, white picket fence, and all the money.
Right.
So let's talk about the symptoms.
Yes. So there's a lot of symptoms. And I think one of the additional things is sometimes somebody might be struggling with mental health and we won't know. But to answer the question that you asked, Elizabeth, so something as simple or small, like someone just pulling away from their friends, right? Or pulling away from their family, they're not really talking to each other or they start isolating themselves. Most of the time, like we won't think too big of it. Like we're looking at it like, oh, it's not a big deal. But for the most part, that could be a small indicator of someone struggling with mental health. So them pulling away is them saying, I don't really want either you in my world right now, or I'm backing away because I don't even know how to deal or name what I'm feeling, right? So that's something very small. And then something that might look big would be someone who is, staying in bed all day, or it's hard to get out of bed, or the things they used to enjoy, right? Like they enjoy going on walks, or they enjoy talking or doing presentations, whatever their thing is, hiking, and then they stop doing it, right? It's something that used to bring them pleasure or they enjoy doing it. Now they don't do it anymore. Something might be going on. So that might be like the most extreme case. Like, wow, you used to do this. Or in church, you used to do praise and worship. You used to participate in these groups. Now you're not even like into it anymore. What's going on? So those are the indicators that might be more extreme because it's visible. We can see you used to be here, you're not here. What's happening?
Right. So for the less extreme, I feel like self awareness is very important, right? As
Hmm.
adults. I tend to catch myself at times. I mean, I wouldn't say, I feel like everyone goes through mental health crisis. It's not big, like the ones you've mentioned,
Yes.
but something as simple as, okay, Sunday night, right? I'm eating dinner and I'm like, man, is Monday already? Tomorrow? Oh my gosh, I have to do this and do that and da 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 da. Then my anxiety starts to build.
Yep.
And then I'm like, oh, I already feel defeated before the
Yeah.
week even starts.
Hmm.
Isn't that a mental health? That's a part of it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think social media laughs about it. We play on it. We're like, oh my gosh, it's Monday.
It's not,
Um,
yeah.
and but collectively, people that are going to work the next day on that Sunday is not. It doesn't feel good. Like you're
Mhm.
rushing whatever you're doing on Sunday. So if it's Christians, we're going to church. We do what we have to do, and then Sunday night happens all the time, and then we're like the anxiety starts to build up. That's an indicator that of mental health being present because clearly there's anxiety about something and it might be work.
Yeah,
So yes, absolutely. I think that's a good example.
yeah. And then also, like, we're all adults, right? So life happens to us. So some people might be going through financial crises, immigration status. That's a
Mhm.
big thing for a lot of foreigners that are here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about death in a family,
Yes.
or like loss of a friend or a
Yes.
close loved one. Also, divorce and separation. I really want us to talk about divorce and separation because, a lot of adults, yes, it's heartbreaking because it's like you're pulling a chunk of your life away from someone or something, but also how it affects children too.
Right. Right.
Because my children are our future. So I feel like with divorce and separation, adults think it's just about them, and it's not just about them because
Right.
now your children see that, and they see the nastiness that occurs between both parents, and they think, okay, this is a norm, right? But it's not a norm.
Right.
Um, it actually shapes their future if they're not careful of what they're seeing and hearing. So I want us
Right.
to talk about also troublesome children.
Yes.
Especially as Christians, as believers, we pray, we try to raise our children the right way. What about the child that diverts,
Right.
right? That's like the black sheep of the house. So,
Mhm.
can we cover ways to cope with these things? Financial crises, we could talk
Right.
about those that are hunting for jobs.
Hmm.
Let's cover death, divorce, because divorce is like a death. A part of you does
Pretty
die.
much. Yeah.
Troublesome children.
Hmm. So to start with the first financial as well as hunting for jobs. So as foreigners, which I think me and you, Elizabeth, can relate to that. So
Mhm.
when we think about foreigners or our parents who had to migrate to the United States, they come to get a better life for their children, but they're coming into a whole different world. They don't know the language, and they have to be able to navigate the world that they're coming to make sure that they could provide a life for their kid. Because if it doesn't work out, then the kids now are going to be super impacted, right? So the financial piece or the hunting for jobs and trying to navigate this new world because it's a different world from where they come from is going to affect their mental health, right? And one of the things that the church can do or family is step in and help the people that aren't able to maybe communicate at an interview or help them get a job where maybe they might not necessarily have to if they're struggling with the language, but learn how to work behind the scenes and then eventually get to a place where they can work up. But those things will impact your mental health. To move on to divorce, separation, as well as a death of a loved one or a family member, right? Those are considered mental health struggles because they then change the dynamic of your life because especially if you didn't intend on the person passing away and it was so sudden, it's going to shift your life. It's going to shift the way like you interact with people. Most of the time it's hard for people to kind of get back to their daily activities, so those are also things that's going to affect your mental health. Counseling for grief, I would encourage someone to if it's a church community you have, I admire and I would encourage someone to seek out their church community to help with that, but also seek out a therapist who specializes in grief, right? Because grief is an ongoing thing. You don't just one day, it's all over 10, 20,
Ages.
30 years down the line, you're still affected by the person who was once here and isn't here, right? So that can be an ongoing thing. But as someone who specializes in grief would be the a good start to work with that versus somebody who specializes in something else because that's outside of their area of expertise. And then you mentioned earlier, divorce, separation is the same as grief, right? Because the person, not that they passed away, they're not connected to you anymore. So now your whole life has to now move a different way because the person is no longer in the picture. That could be finances, because if there was two incomes, now there's one person trying to take the load on by themselves, right? If the person's not in the picture anymore, or other things. And all of these things do impact children. I think a lot of parents think, nope, like the kids, they don't see anything. We're hiding it so well. The kids see everything. Like they pay attention to things. They might not outwardly express themselves, but kids, I mean, surprisingly, when we work with kids in sessions, you'd be surprised at things that they bring to the therapist's attention. And we're like, oh my goodness, like you really know what's going on in the home, or you heard this, or you saw this. So the kids see everything, and things like that do impact kids. I think opening a dialogue with the children, especially when they're younger, depending on when it happened, you're not going to clearly talk to a 5-year-old the way you're going to talk to a 15-year-old. Two separate ages, right? You have a separate conversation about what has happened at your comfort level as a parent. And then the kids who have strayed away from the church, maybe this is not what they want to do anymore, whatever the reason may be. Yes, we should pray. Yes, we should also be fasting on behalf of our children and our bloodline, but we should also be able to understand that maybe the child is going through something, which is why they may be backed away, right? If someone's walking away from something where they're no longer interested, something set it off. There's a root to it. What's the root? Let's identify the root, then we could get to the solution of the problem.
Also, children acting out in school too is a clear indicator. And I feel like as foreigners, we're so quick to reprimand our children, like, what are you doing? I'm going to take this away and blah, blah, blah. We don't know that we need to speak to our children.
Yes.
And even if parents are not even going through divorce, it's just, I feel like parents should create an atmosphere where their kids are able to freely talk to them, and we don't get that opportunity because we'll feel judged or they won't believe us. And like I said, that hush culture we come from.
Yeah.
Oh, don't come and embarrass the family name, or you're taboo to this and this. This is the taboo. You don't talk about this. If a child expresses to you that uncle or auntie such and such touched me or did this to me, why wouldn't you believe your child? Like, that's your child.
Right.
You know what I mean? And as a parent, you're supposed to protect your child at all costs, because these are all traumatic experiences that shape them into an adult one day. And here they are, they're bitter. You will wonder why this child does not even want to get married or has strayed away from the church because they tie everything back to the church, or this is what my parents taught us, but they failed me.
Right.
So therefore, I don't want to be this person, or I don't want to grow up in this way that they wanted me to grow up in.
Right. Absolutely.
So those are really, really important points to talk about. So can we go back to divorce and separation? But
yes.
I want us to tackle the adult perspective.
Yes.
Of things, what it does to adults. And I know it negatively impacts kids, but adults are still human beings too.
Of course.
So we're pushing every day. So what are the negative impacts for couples that are going through divorce or separation, and how can they cope?
Right. I think that's a good way to segue about the divorce aspect. So it's not just how it impacts children, but think about how it impacts the parents. So most people that enter marriage, I'd like to think, right? I can't speak collectively for everyone that is married. They are looking to ride this until, till death do us part, right? So when they notice that it's whatever has happened that has caused us to now make a decision to divorce, then they might feel like a failure, right? A lot of people that describe divorce, they might think like, I failed in a marriage, and I don't know if I want to do this again, or this then will impact, my self-esteem, because depending on which party did what, or whatever the case may be, because like I said, there are different reasons why people divorce, right? If there is infidelity, of course, that's going to impact people's self-esteem, because you're going to wonder why the person strayed away, right? Or if there's other things like domestic violence can also lead to divorce. That's also not talked about in our community, but very prominent, very common. That might lead to divorce. So it does impact the wife or the husband who has to make that hard decision, because it's a hard decision to make. Because some people will say, let's fight through it, let's figure out how to make it work, and then it's like it's not working, and then they have to end up making that decision. So it will impact you mentally, because like I had mentioned earlier, you weren't intending for this to be the end result, yet here we
Right.
are. And then it's like, what do we do, right? So I would also encourage, before making the decision for divorce, go to marriage counseling, because there are a lot of things that are unsaid or might not have ever said that might be shared in a marriage in a marriage session, or when you're seeing a marriage counselor. That's what I was trying to say. So a lot of things might be able to be expressed more because there's a mediator in the room and someone who, this is their line of expertise. So they work with couples, they work with people who are married. And then in the session, maybe you might be able to then make a better decision versus not going and then making the decision. But I know it's a touchy topic because a lot of people have different views about divorce, right? They're thinking you got to endure everything. And some people are like, I don't think I have to deal with everything. Domestic violence might be at the, at the top, where it's just, this is insane. My life is in danger. If I stay here long enough, I might not be able to live or to tell my story. So, as much as it's tricky, I would encourage to see a marriage therapist, a Christian one, especially if you guys are Christians. I would encourage that, and then pray about it and decide what God wants you guys to do at that moment. But it's a difficult topic to honestly talk about. It is.
It is. So thank you so much for that. And just to draw from what you just said, you spoke about domestic violence. So question for you. What is your advice for someone who is in marriage and silently going through domestic violence, but they're afraid to come out of it because of what people would say in the family? What will the church say about it? Because the church does not accept divorce at all. That's not an
Right.
option, right?
Exactly.
Marriage is an institution created by God.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is your advice for someone who is silently going through domestic violence?
Yeah. This is also a touchy topic. I brought it up because it happens so much. It's so common
Very
that we
common.
still sweep it under the rug. It's so common, right? And it's hard when you're in it. When you are a victim of domestic violence, you're in it. It's like you're moving through the world in a clouded, like everything's so clouded. Like you know what you're going through, but you can't come to terms with it sometimes, or you just don't know what to do. I think that's the part. It's hard. It's like, what do I do now? Do I stay? And if your life's in imminent danger, most likely it could end fatally, because most people who are in domestic violence relationships, they might end up 6 feet under. That usually is what happened if there's a lot of physical abuse happening. But the advice would be to seek help, call, do a lot of research. The great thing now is everything is at our fingertips. We can literally just Google research, find things, find places that will help people who are in domestic violence relationships in your county. Every county has a place. So it's not like the places aren't available. Those counties also have safe houses. Sometimes some people have to leave immediately and they're working 24 hours. So you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock. The police will meet you at the police station. Sometimes they might have you do a restraining order if that's something you want to do. And then, of course, you can go to a safe house. They will take children. Some safe houses, depending on how old the kids are, like if they're over 18, they might not be able to take the children. But every county is able to help victims of domestic violence. You just sometimes have to find the help or connect with somebody who can help you.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That's very important. And I feel like the first step is accepting that this is actually happening to you, because some
Right.
people live in denial, like, oh, no, it's not really happening. It was just a small smack.
Right.
It starts off small, right? Then
Right. Exactly.
it trickles to something bigger.
And I wanted to add, I'm so sorry, Elizabeth, to cut you off with the domestic violence. I think what we see on TV is the physical, right? That's the way society points it out, but it's not just physical. There's physical abuse. That's just a given, right? There's emotional, mental abuse, like the gaslighting, minimizing, denying, blaming the person, verbal abuse, where the name calling, they isolate you from family members, Financial abuse is more common now.
Mhm.
Back in the day, it wasn't, because women couldn't even open
Stay
their own bank
home.
account without their
Yeah.
husband. Yeah, so it wasn't like a big thing. But now there's a lot of financial abuse where you can't do anything without them signing a check or giving you permission. So that happens. And then sexual abuse, which happens in marriage. So people
Marriage.
think, yeah, we're married. If I want something, I get it, right? But you still should ask for consent, whether, because they're not your property. You guys are married under God, but that's not your property. So it's not anytime I want something, I can get it. You still ask, because that's still your partner, definitely your partner.
Mhm. And there's
I
still
wanted
an
to highlight
individual
that.
with rights.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so sorry to interject, but in the African culture, they pay dowry for the woman, right? And most men that are not enlightened, I think I'll keep it like that, just they feel like this is my property because they purchased it, right? So if I want to be intimate, I'm going to be intimate. You can't deny me of what's mine.
Right.
I don't subscribe to that. Me
Right.
personally, but this is not about me.
Right.
But that's also abuse because some people don't see it that way. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not a property. I'm not just an object you can just pick up and do whatever you want to do to it and just done.
Right.
If I say no because I'm not up to this task at the moment, I feel like that should be respected.
Right.
But a lot of women that are in marriages, they don't see that as
Mhm.
abuse. That is a
Yeah.
form of abuse because
Right.
you didn't consent to something
Right.
at all. I don't care if your bride price was paid or not. God forgive me. But yes, I don't care if they paid your bride price or not. It's just
Right.
unacceptable. So
Correct.
thank you for covering those topics because when we talk about domestic violence, everything is, oh, did he hit you? No.
Mhm.
We talked about gaslighting,
Mhm.
manipulation,
Mhm.
financial abuse. That's
Yep.
a big one,
Yep.
especially for women that are not working and solely dependent on a partner
Yep.
for a livelihood.
Mhm.
That's why I always encourage women, no matter what, have your own. Please do not give someone absolute control of your life like that.
Right.
It's crazy. We have viewers online, and I know I'll take a quick break just to ask a question that's been posted. And I encourage all our viewers to please post questions or comments or anything else that you would like for us to cover during the segment. The first question is, what do I do when I have done all, but my partner is just too difficult to persuade?
And this is also tough. I'm reading the question, but the persuade part is kind of like light bulb,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking, and I don't know the dynamics of this person's specific relationship, so I
Mhm.
don't want to say this is what it is because I don't know. I'm not there. Um, if you've done all that you have done, right, which could be marriage counseling, we've talked, we've had mediators. The Bible
Mhm.
even says, if there is an issue, you bring it to the person.
Yeah.
Then when they're not listening, then you bring another person. Then when that doesn't work, then you bring it now to the church. Um, they say congregation, but the church committee, the leaders of the church, the pastor, you bring it to their attention. That way, then they now step in and they have to figure out how to figure out this situation. So if you've done all of those steps, so biblically, that would be one of the steps, marriage counseling. We've talked, we've had the sit downs. I would then consult God again, right? And see where God leads you to go. Because he would have to have the end all be all answer. But if you've done all of those things, then consult God and God will give you an answer. So
And God will give you the peace in your answer, whatever
right,
answer it is.
right.
Anything associated with God is peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
God is not an author of confusion.
Right.
So that we know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But okay, I know we're going to get into Christianity and all this
Yes.
soon after we get through our questions, navigate through our questions. But I also say to people, at the end of the day, you have to pick yourself. I, that's just me because life is once.
Yes.
And anyways, yeah, that's it. Second question. Thank you for answering that, Marie. Second question is, how does one manage the stress of a high tension divorce?
Hmm.
That can mess you up totally. Like you go
Yes,
from
it
here to
can.
here really quick. Divorce is not only a separation of two people,
Right.
finances,
Mhm.
properties,
Yep.
a lot. There's
Everything.
a
Yeah.
lot. There's
Yeah.
a whole lot.
Everything.
Yeah.
And I think the question is the stress, right? So the
Stress
divorce is there, but it's the stress that comes from
of
the
a high
divorce, right?
tension
High
divorce.
tension, right? So the divorce has already happened.
Yeah.
They've signed on the dotted line. Now there's the additional stress, which is going to affect your mental health. It is, because every day you now have to worry about what's about to happen, or like you mentioned, Elizabeth, financially, like how now we have to do this again, or we have to figure out
Split
what's,
everything.
split it
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
or a lot of mediation has to keep happening, or
Mhm.
custody. All of those play into if there's kids involved with the divorce. So divorce is one piece, then there's all the additional things. Managing the stress is naming it, talking about it, like you're saying, I'm stressed because of this divorce. It's gonna be tricky, but like Elizabeth said, you have to then put yourself first now. Like, now, what do I need to do to make sure that this doesn't, because stress, we need stress, but too much stress can kill you. It will.
A
It'll
lot
take
of
you
diseases
out.
come from
And
that. Yeah.
mhm, absolutely. So if like, this is just too much, now I have to put myself first. So whatever you need to do, what's a coping skill I can do right now? I need to pray. I'm going to read the Bible, but I also, let me go take a walk today, or let's go and read affirmations, which we'll go a little bit deeper into later today. Or just sit in quiet, and sit in just letting just quietness be around me, where I'm not listening to too much noise, turning off phones, putting phones on
Stillness.
not disturb, everything, just complete silence, so that you can recalibrate. Because sometimes you got to reset. You have to reset. And the only way you could do that is to block out all the noise. So I would like to think that's one of the things. Name it, right? Which you have done, and then now putting yourself first. What do I need to do right now that's good? What can I do to serve me? Not to be selfish, but what do I need to do to recalibrate, reset?
Perfect. So on the topic of divorce, we have another question, and then there's another question on sexual abuse. We'll get to that in marriage. But first, how does one ignore the forms of gaslighting that comes from the other party in the case of divorce?
Right.
So how does one ignore the forms of gaslighting? First of all, Marie, before you answer that, explain to the viewers what gaslighting is, number one, so that
Yes.
we have a clear understanding of what that is or what it consists
Absolutely.
of. And number
Absolutely.
two, how does one ignore the forms of that from divorce from another party?
Right. So I wanted to look up the term, but I think it's better to give like a good definition, example of what that looks like. So if we're in the same room, me and my husband or my partner, we're in the room, something happens, we both saw it, right? We're both going to interpret it differently, because that's just a given. But when the person says the next day, like a bird flew in the house, right? We both saw the bird and it was a bluebird. But then my husband, the next day, when I'm like, oh, did you see the bluebird that happened to fly in our house yesterday? And they're like, no, what are you talking about? That's gaslighting, because you know what you saw. They're now manipulating you to think that what you saw is not real. That's probably
Or otherwise.
right. That's probably one of the good examples I could give about gaslighting. So that's what it looks like. So you saw it, you were there, you experienced it. They tell you that's not what you saw. That's what gaslighting looks like.
Like manipulation.
Right. Pretty much.
Okay.
And then ignoring it, you shouldn't ignore it, because the more you ignore it, it will affect you mentally, because gaslighting falls under mental abuse. So the more you ignore it, you are now still basically accepting the mental abuse, which is going to affect you mentally. And when that happens, when you're getting mentally abused, you now don't have, it's hard for you to make decisions. It's hard for you to then advocate for yourself, because you're underneath this person's, like they pretty much have taken over your perception of life. So when you continue to ignore it, you then start to lose parts of yourself, because they are now taking over, in a sense. I don't know if that, hopefully that kind of makes a little bit sense, but that falls under the mental abuse. So if that's a continuous thing, ignoring it is not going to help. You shouldn't name it. Let them know, this is what I'm noticing. Every time I mention something that happened, you keep saying this isn't happening, right? Or
so in terms of divorce, if they can't talk about it
right,
amicably,
right,
how can, instead of, I think coping should be a better word than ignoring, since
ignoring, yeah.
ignore, but how can one cope with this during a divorce process?
And I don't know, because depending on what's in place, like I'm not sure if there's restraining orders in place, or maybe it's not. How are they supposed to communicate? Because sometimes the courts will tell you got to use the talking app to communicate with each other. So if you guys are able to talk to each other, tell them. If you guys can't, tell the lawyer or whoever the legal party is involved. so that they can, mention or have the person be aware that what they're doing is not okay.
Right. Thank you. So next question, someone actually dropped a comment on the whole sexual abuse in marriage. I knew that was going to come. So they said that the Bible says the woman doesn't have power over her body, but her husband. Same goes with the man. So their question is, how do we reconcile that with sexual abuse in marriage in your own context?
So repeat not the question, but what the person said
the
before.
Biblical verse. The Bible says that the woman does not have power over her body, but her husband. So same goes with the man, person added. So the question is, how do we reconcile that with sexual abuse in marriage in your own context? So the woman doesn't have power over her body. So once I'm married, I don't have power over
I don't have to. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So,
but yeah.
If that's how you interpret the word, I don't want to say that's wrong and say, oh, you can't look at it like that. But when we mention sexual abuse, what I was highlighting is husbands that are forcing their wife or their spouse to be intimate or raping them, because that's common too. But they use the excuse that we're married, I can do that. So that's the point I was trying to make. But I'll just move out of that and use me as an example. So I don't want to feel like a property as a wife, right? And I'd like to think there should be respect that it's reciprocal in the marriage. So if we're going to do that, we do need to agree that yes, we're going to do that, and then it happens. It shouldn't be, well, I want it, because think about it, like you're demanding something, so that's power and control. It's like, I want this, I'm going to get it, this is how I'm going to get it, and then bam, I get it. I don't know that God would honor that, because you're using some strategic tactic to get something that you're gonna get because you're married, right? You're married.
So that submission should come naturally, right? And that's if the person is being treated accordingly or being treated correctly. And I feel like, okay, I'm not married yet, but in marriage, I would assume that you would want your partner to reciprocate and act like you want to be with someone that invites you into that kind of energy or space, right? Rather than you're like, oh, let's just do this and get it over with. You're my wife, so I can do whatever I want to do with you. It does not work like that. It shouldn't work like that. Can't speak for people's marriages, but I'm not going to put up with that. But it should not work like that. That's touchy. But to each his own. I feel like everyone knows what works for them. I can't speak on anyone's marriage, but I know what the Bible says. But I don't feel like God created marriage to not favor a woman, because I feel like a lot of people try to take advantage of what the scripture says, and everyone has different interpretation of the scripture. The Bible also says 40 days and 40 nights. We don't know if it's really 40 exact days and 40 nights. It could be plenty of days and plenty of nights, but like I said, you leave it up for your interpretation. Okay, so moving forward, thank you. This is really good. Let's talk about social media.
Okay.
Because this is a social media generation. Even the babies know how to operate iPads and navigate through YouTube, which is crazy. But, we see Facebook, Instagram especially, people are posting, oh, I just bought the latest 2023 Mercedes-Benz GLE, right? Wow, that's amazing. And somebody's driving a Honda, right? There's nothing wrong with your Honda, because 9 times out of 10, social media is not even realistic. It's not reality. People are only posting good moments or favorable moments. They're not posting their losses. They're not posting their downtime and all that stuff. Someone could be driving the latest car and they're sleeping on a mattress on the floor. You have a bed. You have a whole bed set in your room. But because you're driving a 1999 Honda does not make you less than a person that's driving a 2023 Mercedes-Benz. So let's talk about social media and its impact on our mental health. I know it affects people to the point of their physical, like they feel like they can't come out anymore because they don't look a certain way. Or they undergo surgery because of a certain image that's being promoted on social media. So let's talk about social media and its impact.
Yes. So we are, like you mentioned, Elizabeth, we're in the social media era. So everything, when we go to a wedding, it doesn't, I wouldn't even say just a wedding. If something happens outside, everyone pulls out
We know
their
it.
phone. It's like, right? That's where we're at.
There's
Like,
an accident.
recording.
We're recording. You're supposed to be helping someone that's
everything.
rolling. You're recording, and it's like, what are we doing?
Exactly. So we're not living in the present because we're trying to capture everything, every moment of things that are happening. But social media, as much as it has positive, because clearly we're using some form of, social media and technology to talk about such an important topic. So it has its pros, but it also has its cons. And you're absolutely right. That's the things we do see on social media. And it's not just like adolescents and teenagers and kids. There are adults who are being impacted by social media. You're seeing like you said, people that are only promoting the good things that are happening. Nobody is talking about the losses in their lives. They're not broadcasting it. And so we have this illusion, because that's what social media does. It makes you think that everything you see on there is real, and social media is not real. Like, people are, they are particular about what they want you to see. So they know what's going on in their actual life, but it's like, I'm going to show you 15% of it, but the other percentage is horrible. I just don't want you to see that. So you are automatically assume everybody on social media is living their best life. They're traveling, they're getting married, they're buying these new cars, they're doing all these things. And you automatically think that, oh, maybe I'm not, I need to be there, whatever
right.
that
I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
Like, measuring success based on someone else's post.
Exactly. Yes. And I like the example you gave. Like, somebody might have the newest Mercedes-Benz or BMW, but they have a mattress on the floor. Here you have tables, furniture in your house, but you have a 2012 car or a 1990, and you think you're not winning in life, but you clearly are, because you have your things in order. You got your priorities in order, because you're not worried about flexing, right? So it does impact our mental health, adults, teenagers, and kids. And then what we see, like, more for women, how women are changing their bodies and how they look, and the filters, and making sure that they look their best. That will also impact especially the younger generation, because they think, I have to look like this at 18, or I need to look like this, or I have to have these things. And so they will undergo surgery and do everything they need to do to look like something that's not real, just based off of an illusion. It looks real to the naked human eye, but in reality, it's not. So it will definitely affect self-esteem, self-image, and people will start to look at themselves differently. Like, you're living in a real body, but what you see on social media looks different. So you're thinking something's wrong with you. I don't look pretty enough. I'm big, or I'm fat, or I'm too skinny, or whatever the case may be. And or I don't have these particular features, so I need to go enhance it, right? So it does impact how you view yourself, because of what you're seeing with your naked eye.
So with those that are struggling with this actual part of social media, because for me, social media is entertainment, right? I go there for the giggles, the laughs, the memes. Like, I could be having a rough day, and I'll go on there and I'll be busting out laughing because people are funny. For those who don't see social media like that, because I feel like you have to be mentally tough in this world right now. What would you say to them to cope with how they view things? Because the mind everything begins and ends with your mind. It's so powerful. And, for the fact that you can view such a thing and it affects your whole being, your mood, and you're now comparing. We live in a world full of filters. People are editing videos, editing pictures to make it look perfect, but that's not how they really look.
Exactly.
So, do you have any words for especially younger people who are actually moved by these things? Maybe most of them are. How can they cope in this current world that we live in of social media?
To cope, when it comes to social media, and I like how you mentioned it, Elizabeth, like, you look at social media, it's just pure entertainment. Right? That's all it is. You know how to separate the two, because you have to be able to separate the two, and minimize the time on social media. So social media has its programming that it's doing, just like TV, right? So you got to minimize the time that you're spending on social media too. Because if you are waking up every day and you're checking, and throughout the day you're still checking, it's gonna impact you, because you keep running to it too. Like, it has
addiction.
Right. It has its programming that it's supposed to do. Hence why people can't live without their phones, or when Instagram shuts down for 2 hours, we don't know what to do with ourselves.
No, I've been going through the shakes because I'm like, I need a laugh. Like I need something because I work all day. I need it. But let's not forget that WhatsApp is also social media too.
Yes.
Foreigners and WhatsApp. You're looking at people's statuses, you're looking at this and that, and it affects you. And I'm like, why? It's WhatsApp. But anyways, those who really use it for that, WhatsApp is social media too. And
it is.
People don't look at it like that, but it's
so true.
Yeah.
It is. But I would say like minimize your time on, I mean, I'm not going to tell people just cut it out. It's just a part of where we're at in our world. You can use social media for good. You can also use it for bad. And then know that, so it's not real. Like once you have gotten to that, it's not real. People are only going to show you their wins because that's just what social media does. They only are going to show you all the great things. Remember, these are still human beings, whether they're celebrities or they have the highest status in the world. These are still real people that deal with real life. Like they deal with real life just like us.
And they don't look glamorous all the time.
No, they don't.
So Nigerians will call it packaging, right?
Right.
We call it packaging. Like you've packaged it well enough to show the world, but that's not your real reality.
Right.
So yes, minimizing screen time, definitely. I know there's like a sleep mode or a silent mode that you can set your phone on. You can strategically do that. I have an iPhone. I see that a lot. You can do that on social media apps as well. For me personally, with social media, I'm young. I use it. I utilize it for a lot of things. I promote people's businesses. I promote a lot of things on my Instagram handle mainly. But there are times I just need to shut off, like you said. And I catch myself these days at events, right? I want to be more present because I feel like we've lost touch of being present.
Yes.
You go to restaurants, everybody's on your phone. You're at a table. No one knows how to actively socialize.
Nope.
Human to human interaction. We've lost that, right?
That's
and I feel like COVID didn't help matters in that either because we were all like isolated, but we can all communicate through social media, right?
Right.
So I feel like just bringing yourself back to number one, self-awareness. Being aware of self. When you're aware of self, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you know when to shut something off, you know when to shut it on. Even as Christians during prayer time, I don't like online. I'm sorry, I don't like online church. That's me. If I miss church, I will not go online.
Right.
Because I know myself. Okay, I'll go from listening to sleeping off to looking at other apps. The text comes on. Oh, my phone is already in hand. Let me check and see what's. I can't. But you have to know who you are.
Right.
First of all, and you got to know when to shut it off. Like shut down. It's okay.
To
just unplug. Right. And we'll get to those things later on too. For children.
Yes.
We have a question because children are really. They don't know how to play with themselves anymore. They don't go outside again. Everyone's on an iPad. A baby starts throwing tantrum. We're giving a baby an iPad to calm down. So you can watch a show. So a question just came in. How do we control our kids on social media engagement?
Right. So it would be the same, right? So with adults, minimizing the time on social media, the same with kids. There are parental controls on kids' phones. I think on the iPhone, I'm not sure. I think they would have it on other phones too. You as a parent can control. So they can be on the phone when they get off of school for maybe 2 hours, and then the phone automatically shuts off. So they can't even get on the phone until either the next day or when they're coming from school. And as a parent, I would say like encourage the kid to not just solely rely on the phone or the social media aspect, because then they turn into adults who are always on their phone, like walking to the train station, to get the train on the phone, or, walking across the street on the phone. Like they become that adult, right? So start early and start like minimizing the time that they have it. Parents, you can control that, just like you can control what they watch on TV and YouTube. And that can be an additional, like you can say like, if you do your chores and if you do these things, you can get 1 hour of screen time. Like we're not saying completely taken away, because that's just not being realistic, right? But you can say like, oh, you did your chores, you did your homework, you get now 1 hour of the iPad. Once the hour is done, take it back. We're putting it away, and then go draw, go color, go build
and play. Go
play. Let's go take a walk as a family. Like you have to model those things, because if not, and it's like, I get it. Sometimes it's like I can get dinner done, laundry, and have them on the thing for 4 or 5 hours, and I can knock out all these things. But then the kids, that's what they're doing all day. And then they keep doing that all day. Like, I'm just going to keep getting on the iPad and I'm going to be on my phone. I'm watching TV, video games. You can have it, but you as a parent have to be able to map out, like control that. Like, you get an hour of the iPad, or you get an hour on playing video games. Once you're done, we're reading a book, then we go to bed. Because you got to you have to break it up. You got to break it up.
And I also know parents that don't even allow their kids to touch anything electronic during the week. It's like a reward on the weekend. Like, okay, you did X, Y, and Z weekend. The weekend is for you. There's no school. All your homework is done. Chores are done.
Right.
You can enjoy your Saturday and have this
for
yourself.
Right.
I feel like it has to start with the parents, because everyone is always looking for the easy way out, the whole microwave effect. Now. Oh, these kids are bothering me. Let me just hand them this so that they can just get out of my way. No, you still have to do your job as a parent. You still have to engage as a parent. You have to be part of your child's life, like in the details. Do not let, this is 2023. We're looking for convenience, and you just lose grip on your child. This is your child. You carry this child. You raise this child. You're paying for everything this child is doing. You should have absolute control and set that tone that you want, because the child you nurture today is the adult that you're going to be either bailing out of something tomorrow or clapping for tomorrow.
Yep.
So the work has to be done now, right? Okay. So let's talk about therapy.
Yes.
And this is heavy. Therapy is not just sitting in front of someone. This is heavy. But before we jump into therapy, learning to say no. Right? Okay, we're cultural folks.
Yep.
And everything is, we're trying to please people in our lives. Oh, I can't say no to Big Mommy. I can't say no to Uncle such and such. I can't say. You're at work. Hey, we need you on this project, but you already have 4 or 5 other projects you're working on. Saying no. I guess this segment should be called boundaries.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yep.
How do we set healthy boundaries?
Yes.
To protect our mental health also.
Yes.
And to have healthy relationships with the people in our lives.
Right. So yes, that's exactly what it is. It's boundary setting and setting healthy boundaries. So unhealthy would be, I'm available to everybody. I can do everything. I'm going to stretch myself thin so that I can make everybody happy. That's super unhealthy, right? But the opposite of that is learning to say no, right? And you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be disrespectful. I think sometimes when we think about it, it's like, if I say no, they're not going to like me, or they're going to think I'm a rude person. Like, no. If it's at work, if your boss says, can you do this? Unfortunately, I can't, because I have these other 3 tasks that I need to complete. I might be able to do that next time, but unfortunately at this present moment, I can't, because I have these other tasks that I want to make sure, or projects that I complete, and I want to do them efficiently. That's not being rude, but you still said no. If you said yes, now the other projects might not be that great, because you got to take out time for those projects and make sure the other project is good. And if someone asks a favor, like, can you do this for me? Can you pick me up and take me to these 3 different stores and then take me back home? It's like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, if you could do it one time, but if it's a continuous thing, like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not available. This is my time to be with my family, or, this is my time to be with the kids. I just can't. Like, so you don't have to be rude, but you have to learn to say no. People pleasing is a trauma response anyway. We were taught that as a kid, that every time somebody says you got to do something, you're available. How? How? So you have to unlearn that. And it's hard. It is hard, because you're thinking about, what are they going to think about me if I say no? It doesn't matter. You have to be able to set limits and boundaries with everybody, bosses, parents, your kids, friends, family members, because if not, the more you say yes, they're just going to keep using you. And when you can't anymore, they're going to move on to the next person, and you're going to be sitting there trying to figure out, how did I get to this point? And that will affect your mental health. It will.
Right. And I also say to people too, you have to make sure you are okay first, so that you can be okay for everyone else.
Exactly.
Right. And you can't keep pouring into people. Pouring into people. No one's pouring into you. Then you get to a point where you're depleted. Now what? Another question just came in. I know this is a little off, because we've kind of moved forward from this, but how can one maintain his mental health in a harsh economy, working hard and yet not much to show for it?
Hmm. It's tough. It is tough. I think when we think about mental health, like I had mentioned before, it's the three different parts of you, right? It's the emotional, the social, and psychological being. So taking care of your mental health should also be on that list too. I think that's the thing. We keep pushing it to the side, and it's like I gotta work and I gotta do these things, right? When you're taking care of your mental health, even when things are not going the greatest, you're able to navigate them better. That's the point
Mhm.
about mental health. So it's not like life is going to be amazing. That's not how life works, because life is outrageous for all of us, right? But if you're able to maintain your mental health, when you lose your job, it's like, I'm good. I know God got me. Like, it
Hmm.
might have happened for a reason. It's tough right now because I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for these bills, but I know at least mentally I'm good. But when you lose your job and mentally you out of whack, you're gonna lose. It's there's no way you're gonna be able to function because
Yeah.
mentally you're not stable. So when something happens, you're like, you don't know what to do, which then affects you more. So you do have to make sure you get to a place where your mental health is at halfway decent at least, or close to good. That way, even when things happen, because the things that are happening, we can't control them.
Hmm.
If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Because that's how life is. It's just now like, how do I navigate it better, or how do I move through this situation until the next door
Mhm.
opens or the next door closes, and that's how it works.
And I like we spoke earlier on this, and I told you something that I practice. You have to find your ground,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Um, things the world may be chaotic for me most times, but sometimes, like I said, I'll take off my shoes and I'll walk outside, like just to
Right.
touch the ground. I
Hmm.
feel like when you're grounded and you have to be present, like really sit with yourself. And you
Hmm.
mentioned something earlier about stillness, right?
Yes.
Shutting off everything, the noise, the distractions, and you sit with yourself, because once you sit with yourself and you're grounded, is how you respond to things.
Hmm.
Things won't stop happening, but your
Right.
response matters, right?
Hmm.
Because that deals with your mental health.
Right.
Like, someone cut me off today. The old me, I'd have been like, ah, but I was like, have it.
Yeah.
But mentally, I feel good because
Yeah.
I don't want to be disturbed, right? Things will
Exactly.
always happen, but it's your response to those things when it's happening, right?
Hmm.
And just like you said, trusting God
Yep.
that everything is going to be fine.
Exactly.
You have to really know how to like channel your mind to that, reshift your mind into
Hmm.
the positive. Like, okay, this is happening. Some things are not happening to you. They happen for you, for your good.
Hmm.
The Bible says that all things work
Yep.
together.
Right.
All things.
Hmm.
God is very intentional.
Exactly.
Sometimes we'll tell God, "Oh God, please teach me patience. Make me a more patient person." God will throw things in your way that will test your patience, just so that He can see how you'll react and to help
Hmm.
build things.
Yeah.
When you go through things in your life,
Hmm.
sometimes it's to build character.
Hmm.
It's to build character, because
Hmm.
you might be in that season of your life where things are not going your way.
Right.
But in that season, your faith is being strengthened, right? You're drawing strength from, you know what? As long as I'm awake to see another day, there's hope. I'm
Exactly.
gonna keep working towards what I need to work towards.
Yep.
Oh, I'm gonna just draw inner strength from myself and keep pulling myself together, because I know it's all gonna be fine.
Right.
Like, you have to be in oneness with yourself.
Yep.
Self awareness. I'm big on that. I think we should do a segment
Yes.
strictly on self awareness, because a lot of adults have not mastered that, and that's why they lash out like
Yep.
kids at an adult age. Okay, so moving up. As an adult too, especially for the working class, learning how to take a mental health day,
Mm.
number one, and the importance of taking a PTO.
Yes.
Foreigners like to work. It's the hustle. We gotta work. We gotta make this money. Keep going, keep going, keep going. But then you run yourself down and wear
Yep.
yourself thin.
Yep.
So the importance of taking a mental health day, I do take them. One day
Yes.
I was just like, I don't want to talk to anyone in the office. I don't want to meet in. I don't want any no telephone calls. I don't want to read emails. I need
Yep.
to shut it down. And
Yes.
PTOs.
Yes. So we have them for a reason, right? The
Yes.
PTO and the mental health. So I'll do the same thing. I tell my supervisor, I'm like, Friday, I'm not going to be here. I I got it. And she already knows, she gets it because it's been a long week. And that actually is a part of the self-awareness in an insight that you have. Like, I know this week wasn't, it was a lot for me. So I know I need one day to reset, recalibrate. That way by Monday, I'm ready to go. Because if I don't take that PTO or take that mental health day, I'm probably not going to be the best version of myself the following week, right? Or the week after. So yes, it's okay. First of all, we have it, so use it. It's okay. It doesn't make you less of an employee. It doesn't mean you don't have work ethic. It doesn't mean like you're lazy because you took a PTO or a mental health day. Sometimes you need that. We're one person. We're just one particular person, and there's so much that life throws at us, right? Like we were mentioning before. Sometimes we're dealing with other stuff outside of work. And it's a lot. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know how I got through this week, but thank God I did, right? And sometimes when you notice things are not going the way that it's supposed to, yes, take a break. Take a break. That's what the break is for. Even in the day, some people get 30 minutes, some people get an hour, because you need to take a break. That's what life is about. You can't run. We're not robots. We're not intended to keep moving, moving, because we're not much like it's a machine, but we're not intended to keep going until we can't anymore, because our bodies are going to tell us when it's too much. Like, oh, we just did a little bit too much this week, or we did too much this month, or we did too much this year. I need you to slow it down. I really need you to slow it down. So sometimes our bodies are going to tell us if we don't do it, but mental health days, PTOs, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. So use them.
And sometimes people feel like when they do take the PTO or break, they're guilty.
Right.
They're like, oh, this is money. This is X amount of money. They do the calculation like, oh, I could have worked this shift, these many shifts. This is money we could have had. Okay, you do understand that if something happens to you, that job is going to replace you in 2 seconds.
Instantly.
They don't care how much blood, sweat, and tears you put into the job or for them. They're going to replace you.
Yep.
So that's why sometimes you just need that time to just refuel, right? Come back and like you said, we go through personal stuff in our lives. It's not just work. Sometimes you need a day to just process the things you're going through.
Right.
Personally, because it'll kill you. And I don't mind as the devil's playground. I always tell people, like, listen, if you don't deal with what's going on up here, you're going to lose it. Right? And we spoke about faces of mental health. Mental health has no face. People that are killing themselves are the people who appear to be the most jovial, right? Happy, dancing around, acting movies that make you smile, taking trips around the world, eating different foods from different countries, and they still take their lives because all of this, they didn't address what was up here.
Right, exactly.
Sometimes we can't use work as a mask to get through things or to cope. Sometimes you just need to sit down, shut it all off, and deal with it. Sit with yourself. Pray about some things. Use a day. Sometimes we don't even pray how we're supposed to because we're working.
That's true.
You need to start taking account of your life and sitting with yourself and with God. Okay? So that leads us to therapy for real. So first of all, before we talk about therapy and Christianity, let's talk about therapy in general. I want us to cover therapy and cultural perception.
Yes.
But first of all, tell us what therapy is.
Okay. So
tell us the importance of therapy, and then we'll jump into cultural perception of therapy.
Yes. So therapy is what we would like to say the tool that you would use to help when it comes to mental health, right? And we don't encourage, I think clinicians and mental health, we don't encourage when you're going through something that is outrageous, then to go to therapy. That's a good time, right? But even when things are fine, we would still encourage you to go to therapy. So therapy is you sitting with a trained therapist, counselor, clinician. There's so many names, social worker, trained. You sit with someone who this is their line of expertise, and you're talking about things that whatever would bring you to therapy. So whether it's grief, you lost somebody, you're trying to process that trauma. That's something you could talk about in therapy. Anger. I'm struggling with my anger. I'm always angry. I'm so bitter. I have a lot of resentment. That's something you could talk about in therapy, right? The therapist's job is to listen. They're like a sounding board. They're listening to you, and they're helping you kind of connect dots. They're helping you process, and then additional things that somebody else might want to work on. Like, I want to learn how to speak up for myself. I want to learn how to set healthy boundaries, right? I want to repair my relationship with my father. I want to repair my relationship with my mother. So those are things that are talked about amongst other things in therapy. The therapist cannot disclose what they talk about in a session to no one. Like, you cannot talk about what you shared to your family members, your spouse. You can't do that. You can't disclose anyone's name. So by law, they can't disclose what's being shared. And I think that's why people don't want to come to therapy, because they think, first of all, there's this stranger I'm telling all my business to. How do I know that they won't tell anyone, right? And I get that. That part makes sense. But any clinician or therapist, if they share, they lose their license. So now you have no career. You don't even have a job now because you couldn't basically keep your mouth shut. So they cannot disclose what they are bound by HIPAA. They can't disclose your name. Even if they see you in the street, they have to act like they don't know you so that they can protect your identity, because we don't know who you know. We don't know who's around. And no one needs to know. Like, if you say hi to us, we greet you, but we keep it going because we have to protect the identity of our clients for the real reason why they are sharing things, and they don't want us to, of course, disclose that. So we protect the identity of our clients. We're not telling everybody what's happening in a session or after a session, of course.
Perfect. Thank you for that, because a lot of people need that disclaimer. So let's talk about therapy and cultural perception. Okay. And I decided to ask you about this because I wanted you to further dive into this because, as you know, I lost my dad when we were in undergrad.
Yes.
And I was literally floating through life like nothing happened. I just buried a parent. I'm back on campus. I'm a resident advisor. I'm president of an all-female org. I'm just running around, right? Going to work study.
Yep.
Then my boss one day told me, and she was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And she now told me that she booked an appointment with me to see a therapist on campus. I was upset. What? I was like, "What do you mean, therapist? I'm Nigerian. We don't do that." Like, I literally went off on this lady. But I went to therapy. My first session was like life-changing. Why was it life-changing? All the lady asked me was, "How are you?" And I literally cried the entire 1 hour allotted to myself. But a lot of us, a simple "How are you?" we don't even know how we're doing. So, because we bottle up so much. So let's talk about therapy and cultural perception, because as cultured folks, we laugh at therapy. We're like, why?
Yep.
You have your family members. You know?
It's true. It's so true. And you're absolutely right. It's the stigma, right, that's attached to mental health or therapy. So they're like, why would you go and talk and tell somebody all your business? Like, why would you do that? Because in their mind, they can't fathom that somebody right to go and tell all your business, right? Or they're like, if you go, because I think the other facets of mental health, they clump them all together, right? So when you go to therapy, individual counseling, that's the more common thing that happens. Now you go to therapy, and then once you're done, you go home. Then you have inpatient, which is considered higher level of care. That's for people who need to stay in a facility, right? More so depending on the severity of their diagnosis or issue. Then you have psychiatric wards, right? And then we consider those people crazy, like they're nuts. Something wrong with them. They got to be locked up in a facility
and
medicated, right? And then we have to make sure we're restraining them or whatever they're doing in the psych ward to calm them down. So what happens is our culture clumps them all together. And they're like, if you're going to therapy, you crazy, because you're going to start here at individual counseling, you're going to go there, and then you're going to end up at the psych.
I feel like it progresses, like, you're just losing it. Yeah.
Right. So then they have that stigma, like, why would you do that? Because that does bring shame to our family bloodline, now they know you're going to therapy and they know you're at this facility. So now they think something's wrong with you. But when you think about it, right, and I think we're probably going to touch on it a little later, we all have somebody in our family member that is off, right? But every time you ask questions, they're all like, shh, don't say nothing. Like, they always been like that. It's like, I don't know, something about them, something about this family member don't, you know, when we're at Thanksgiving, Christmas, or we're not, you know, having cookouts, something's not right, but we always just keep it on the hush. So I think they know what's going on. I think it's just culturally they were taught to, we don't talk about stuff. Don't tell people your problem. And then in the church, we do the same thing. It's like, just talk to God, which is good. Right. Yes. And then but then we're like, don't get the help that you need. So culturally speaking, I think we're just taught, and from their parents taught them, like, we don't talk about these things. And if you do go get help, then you're crazy. And I don't want people to know that my child is crazy because or I don't want people to know my wife or my husband is crazy. So don't go get help.
And I know we're about rounding up, but I know we spoke earlier and I told you that the same way people go to the gym for their physical body, I see therapy as an emotional or mental gym as well.
Yes.
You know, yes, God created everything. He created the body. He's the ultimate healer, but you also help yourself too, because God helps those who help themselves.
Right.
You also go to the gym so that you can do your part to keep your physical body healthy. Just like we go to church, and church is a spiritual hospital, right? But therapy too can be looked at as a mental and emotional hospital or gym, right? So this brings us to our last topic to cover: therapy and Christianity.
Yes.
Some people don't believe it goes hand in hand because once again, we're faith-based, right? You're anchored to the ground, like you're anchored in Christ. There's nothing else. You shouldn't talk to anyone else. It's God and God alone. Yes, God can change your situation 100%. I believe that.
Yeah.
But therapy. I've experienced it, so I know the benefits, because I used to be one of those culture people like, never, right? But I was there because I lost a parent very early.
Right.
And to cope with that, and as a firstborn, with the responsibilities that came out of that, it was a lot. It was overwhelming. I didn't understand how much I was carrying.
Right.
Wise, I prayed a lot, but I still carried that. So let's tackle therapy and Christianity. Christianity. Can they go hand in hand? Is it possible? Is it not possible? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so it's there's also a lot of misconceptions and a lot of stigma attached in church, in our church community. So we think that, you know, if you're going through a mental health struggle, just consult with God, which is true. I'm with that 1,000%. I think the thing is, we forget that God places people on earth for specific reasons. When you have heart issues, you go to a cardiologist. You will pray, but you'll still go see someone who is in that line of expertise. Right. They specialize in that. If I have issues with my feet, I'm going to see a podiatrist. My back, I'm going to go to a chiropractor. Right. So you still pray, but you still go consult so that they can tell you what's going on. And then we work on it together. So yes, I'm going to pray, but I'm also going to go see what's wrong. And then we do it together. I think the thing is with mental health, we think don't go, just consult God. And we forget God placed therapists on earth for a reason too. So you could do both. You can pray. You should pray. You should fast. You should seek God. And you can also go to therapy. There are Christian therapists for a reason, right? They have the same values as you. So they are able to connect with you on that level. And then they can still provide therapy and work through all the stuff and still keep and will not disclose none of your business to anybody else. So either way, you can do both together, but it is taboo. And I think people in our churches will say, like, you know, maybe you're not praying enough. That's why you have anxiety. Or maybe you're depressed because you don't come to church. You just keep.
You're not applying the word. Why?
You're not reading in the word. So of course you're depressed. And it's like somebody could get on the pulpit, lead worship, have the crowd going. I mean, getting so close to the throne of God, go home and cry themselves to sleep.
Yes.
And that's real. That happens. I think what we see, we think, oh, that person's fine. Or someone might, you know, be able to preach a sermon or help out in Sunday school, and then they go home and they're thinking about committing suicide, right? And then we're like, we think that they're okay, but really they're not. They just know how to hide it and mask it. So being able to, one, talk about it like we're doing now is one good thing, because there are people sinking, they're struggling, they are drowning in their mental health struggles. Nobody's asking how are you, like you said, Elizabeth, are putting their hand out to help them up, and they're thinking, oh, they're good because they come to church every day. I see them in church. They're always here. They're fine. So we're not going to worry about them, and they're sinking. They're sinking.
Well, we're over time, but thank you so much. I feel like I could talk about this all day because it's necessary, right?
Yes.
It's absolutely necessary. Marie, thank you so much for your time. And before we go, I would just like to encourage everyone as believers to be kind to one another. Be kind, because I've heard stories of someone who was on the verge of committing suicide. The girl was actually on her way home to commit suicide, and she bumped into someone in the street that was very kind to her, and it changed her whole mind on committing suicide. So be kind to people, because you don't know what people are carrying. You don't know what they're going through. Sometimes when people are nasty to you, they're just projecting because they're going through a lot. It has nothing to do with you. But always be kind and love your neighbors like God loves you. Like the Bible is literally a manual, right? Basic instructions before leaving earth. That's what Bible stands for. All the instructions to everything is in the Bible. The Bible tells us to love one another.
Right.
Because God loves us, and his love for us is agape love. That's unconditional love. But we have to show our brothers, sisters, neighbors, everyone around us genuine kindness, because you don't know who needs it and what they're passing through. And I feel like that makes a world of a difference. So thank you all so much for tuning in.
Absolutely.
Marie, thank you for your time. Thank you for the wisdom you shared with us. Do you mind if people reach out to you? I know you're licensed.
So they can, I'll give like my email, and I'm open to questions, because I know sometimes on a live like this, there are questions you don't want to like outwardly say, so you can share questions. I'll give my email. Should I put it in the chat, or?
You can say it out, and for those listening, they can.
So it's my name, Marie L. Dossus@gmail.com. So all together, Marie, the letter L, DOSSOUS@gmail.com.
Okay. And everything is confidential, of course. And
no judgment.
No judgment zone. Thank you so much. This was amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you. And thank you all so much for joining Liberation Prayer Ministry. And look out for our upcoming segments monthly next month. I wonder what we're going to talk about next month, but stay tuned. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and a blessed remainder of your weekend.